My husband kissed me goodbye at 5:30 in the morning, but his suitcase was still in the car. Then I found the phone and someone named R. And the moment he walked through the door, I realized it was all a lie. They told me he was on a work trip. But I knew the second night something was wrong, not because he didn't text, but because the dog refused to eat. My name is Erin. I'm 34, live in a quiet suburb in Pennsylvania, and I work nights at a local pharmacy. My husband, Mark, is in corporate logistics, which means he's always on the move, juggling conferences, supplier calls, warehouses I'll never see. I used to joke that I married a suitcase with a suit. That week, I wasn't joking. He left on a Tuesday. I kissed him at 5:30 a.m. in the driveway. He smelled like fresh shaving cream and wore the navy blazer I liked. His suitcase was already in the car. No eye contact. Just a quick, love you, see you Friday, like a line he practiced too many times. By Wednesday night, the house felt too still. He hadn't posted anything on LinkedIn, no new photos from airports, not even a blurry pic of conference coffee. His texts were dry. 2-word answers. No emojis. How's the hotel? Fine. Sleep okay. Tired. I tried to tell myself it was just a rough week. Maybe a bad signal. Maybe stress. But the silence wasn't just on his end. It crept into the corners of the house, the way our bedroom stayed too clean, the way the thermostat still blinked 70 even though he always turned it down to 66 at night. I started hearing things. Like footsteps on the stairs when I was brushing my teeth. Or drawers closing that I hadn't opened. It was probably just the house settling, I told myself. I turned on the hallway light before bed. Thursday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I checked his side of the closet. His running shoes were still there. He never traveled without them. He ran every morning at 6 a.m., even on work trips. That was the first time I felt the cold bloom of fear. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. The kind of spin that makes you dizzy if you watch too long. Something didn't add up. Not yet enough to scream, but enough to feel a crack. The crack deepened the next day when I opened the trunk of my car. And there it was. His suitcase. Still packed. Still zipped. And beside it, a second phone, face down, blinking with a missed call from someone named R. I didn't touch it right away. The suitcase sat there in the trunk like a corpse, lifeless but heavy with implication. My first instinct was to slam the trunk shut and pretend I'd never seen it. Maybe I could still lie to myself for a few more hours. Maybe it was an old bag. Maybe he meant to take it but forgot. Maybe the second phone wasn't even his. But I knew better. Mark was meticulous. A control freak, really. He had a packing checklist saved in his notes app. He refolded his clothes after TSA checks. He never forgot anything. And he definitely didn't carry burner phones. Still, I closed the trunk and walked back inside like I'd imagined it all. Like I hadn't just found a version of my husband I didn't recognize. That night, I didn't sleep. I just laid there listening to the clock tick and the dog occasionally whimper in her sleep. I reached out for Mark's pillow. It smelled like laundry detergent, not him. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, went outside in my robe, and opened the trunk again. Sunlight hit the phone this time. It wasn't just blinking, it had a cracked corner and 3 missed calls now. All from R. I picked it up with 2 fingers, like it might burn me. It was a cheap Android, not the iPhone he used for work and personal calls. I hesitated for a long time before I tapped the screen. No passcode. Just a wallpaper of a sunset over a pier, not our pier, not anywhere we'd ever been. My hands were trembling as I opened the text app. The last few messages were from the same number. R, I miss your hands. R, you didn't call last night. R, don't ghost me again, Mark. I'm serious. My stomach flipped. I sat down on the bumper of my car, the phone gripped in my palm, the Pennsylvania morning too cold for what I was reading. There were more messages. Weeks worth. Photos. Some tame, a coffee cup on a table, a blurry mirror selfie. Others not tame. I only looked at one before I shut the phone off. My chest felt like it was caving in. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just disconnected. I walked into the house, poured a cup of coffee, and sat by the window as if it were a normal Saturday morning. The dog sat at my feet. I looked out at the street, calm, quiet, middle-class normal. I replayed everything. How many trips he'd taken this year. The sudden switch in Cologne 3 months ago. The way he started locking his laptop and showering right when he got home. The time he said Rachel in his sleep and swore he was dreaming about friends. And still, I clung to denial. Maybe this was old. Maybe they broke it off. Maybe he kept the phone as blackmail, or maybe it was planted. That fantasy died around noon when I heard the garage door open. I jumped. The suitcase was still in the trunk. The phone still on the counter. I rushed to the front window and pulled the curtain. His car. His silhouette. He wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday. He always texted before returning. But now he was here, walking up the driveway with a grocery bag like nothing happened. He didn't see me watching. He unlocked the front door like he owned the world. "Hey babe," he called. "They canceled the last workshop. Figured I'd surprise you." I stood in the hallway frozen. My hand brushed the counter where the phone still lay. Exposed. And then he saw it. His eyes darted to the phone. His smile faltered, only for a second, but enough. Then came the cover-up. The practice charm. "Oh hey, that's not mine. Must have been in the rental or something." I didn't speak. I didn't blink. He set the groceries down. Acted like nothing had happened. Asked what I wanted for lunch. I nodded. I think I even mumbled salad just to fill the air. But inside me, something hollowed out. I slept in the guest room that night. Told him I had a headache. He kissed my forehead and said, "Love you." I waited until he snored. Then I got up, turned on the phone, and messaged her back. "Me, who are you?" I didn't get a reply right away. I lay in bed staring at the dim glow of that burner phone screen, watching the text status stay delivered for what felt like hours. I must have drifted off at some point because when I opened my eyes again, the room was darker and the phone was blinking. One new message. Mark? Who is this? My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I could have said his wife. I could have sent every word my heart was screaming, liar, cheater, coward. But I didn't. I just typed. "Me, I need to know what's going on." And then, silence. Down the hall, Mark was still asleep. His snoring had that same rhythmic hitch it always did when he was truly out, a deep inhale, a catch, then a sigh. I had memorized that sound during our first year of marriage when I was still in love with the idea of safety. When he used to reach for me in his sleep. At 3:42 a.m., the reply came. I don't know who you are, but if this is some kind of game, I'm done." He said he ended things. I didn't know he was still married. I stared at that last line until my vision blurred. Still married. Somewhere in my brain, the word still triggered something like I was the leftover, the stale version. Like he'd moved on and just forgot to file the paperwork. I didn't reply. The next day, I pretended to go to work. I packed my lunch. Put on my badge. Told Mark I'd be back late because we were short-staffed. He didn't question it. Didn't look up from his phone. Just said, "Okay babe," like a robot on autopilot. I drove 2 towns over and sat in the parking lot of an abandoned Borders bookstore for hours. Just thinking. That's when I messaged my older sister Marnie. We hadn't talked in nearly a year, not after she called Mark a manipulative charm addict, and I told her to back off. But I needed someone who'd tell me the truth without sugarcoating it. She answered on the second ring. "You sound like crap," she said. "What happened?" I told her everything. About the suitcase. The second phone. The messages. His non-reaction. The fake trip. The salad lie. There was silence on the other end. And then she said, "You know you're allowed to leave, right?" It hit me harder than I thought it would. Not because I hadn't thought about it, but because no one had ever said it out loud. Not even me. "You don't have to figure it all out in a day," she added. "But staying isn't strength, Erin. It's self-harm." I cried then. In my car. In a dusty parking lot where teenagers used to make out and the roof had half collapsed. I cried until my vision swam and my head throbbed and my body went cold. I drove home that night and didn't say a word. I crawled into the guest bed and stared at the ceiling like it might open up and swallow me. In the morning, Mark made me pancakes. Like he used to. He even played our Sunday playlist on his phone like nothing had happened. I watched him dance in the kitchen. A fake show for a fake life. I realized I didn't know this man anymore. Or maybe I never had. Later that day, I grabbed his laptop while he was showering. I'd never done that before. The password was still my birthday. There was a folder on the desktop named Receipts. Inside photos, videos, screenshots of messages. None of them were mine. One image stopped me cold, the same coffee mug I'd seen in the burner phone messages on a table I didn't recognize. And beside it, his hand. His wedding ring missing. I didn't close the laptop. I left it open on the desk. That night, I said nothing. But I started packing my things. Not in suitcases. Just bags. One drawer at a time. Quietly. Slowly. The kind of quiet that means something's about to break. I started brushing my teeth with the door locked. It's a small thing. But that's how it begins, taking back pieces of your space. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. I just shifted. Slid into a version of myself I barely recognized. One that moved in shadows and silence. One who didn't flinch when she lied to his face. I might visit my sister next weekend, I said one morning. He barely looked up from his phone. Cool. Tell Marnie I said hi. He hadn't said her name in over a year. He probably thought I was bluffing. Maybe I was. But the moment I saw him shrug like that, like my life was a blip on his radar, I knew something in me had turned. I stopped waiting for the apology. Stopped searching his eyes for guilt. Stopped praying for the version of him I once loved to return. Because that man? He didn't exist. I went to work, smiled at customers, rang up aspirin and allergy meds while my insides curled into knots. I let my coworkers believe I was just tired, that everything was fine, that my life was still the glossy, picture-perfect marriage I used to pretend it was. You're lucky, Erin, one of them said. A husband who cooks and remembers your birthday? That's the dream. I nodded, smiled, laughed even. But at home I was slipping. My appetite vanished. My face thinned. I stopped wearing makeup. Stopped folding laundry. The dog followed me from room to room, like she knew something had fractured. I avoided the bedroom unless I absolutely had to go in. Mark never asked why I stopped sleeping next to him. He just filled the silence with routine. Dinners. Chores. Bad jokes. Like the lie had become our language. A week after I found the burner phone, he came home with flowers. Not the kind I liked. Not peonies like he used to bring me in spring, but a random mixed bouquet. Grocery store cheap. The kind you grab when you feel guilty but don't want to admit why. He didn't say sorry. He didn't say anything. Just handed them to me and kissed the top of my head. I stood there with petals brushing my wrist and wanted to scream. But I didn't. I thanked him. Put them in a chipped vase. Watched them rot in slow motion on the kitchen table. People started to notice. Marnie texted every other day. I stopped answering. I didn't want to talk. Didn't want advice. Didn't want to hear the truth spoken back at me. Even my neighbor, older woman named Louise, knocked one morning to ask if everything was all right. You've seemed different lately, she said gently. Everything okay, sweetheart? I told her I was just tired. Work stuff. The flu going around. She nodded. But her eyes stayed on me for a second too long. Like she knew. Mark and I went to dinner the following weekend. Some Italian place with fake candles and laminated menus. He talked the entire time. About work. A guy named Brent who got demoted. A warehouse that almost burned down. His voice was too loud for the space. I stared at the wax dripping down the side of the fake candle, and wondered if anyone else in the restaurant could hear the silence between us. When the check came, he looked up and said, "You've been quiet tonight." I said, "I'm just tired." He smiled like he believed me. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror with the door locked again. I looked at my reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, lips chapped from winter air. I touched the skin beneath my eyes and whispered, "You're still here." And then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I wrote a list. Not a packing list. Not a shopping list. A me list. Things I'd done before him. Places I wanted to go. Books I wanted to read. Recipes I used to make. The color I wanted to paint the guest room. The way I liked my coffee, not how he made it, how I did. It wasn't a plan. Not yet. But it was something. The next morning I started waking up a little earlier. Took the dog on longer walks. Opened windows even when it was cold. Mark noticed eventually. "You seem better," he said over eggs one morning. I nodded. I didn't say why. Because the truth was, I had stopped waiting for him to notice he broke me. I was learning how to rebuild without asking him for permission. It happened on a Thursday. Rain was tapping the windows like nervous fingers, and the dog refused to go outside. I stood in the kitchen stirring soup that neither of us really wanted. Mark was late. Again. He hadn't mentioned a meeting. He hadn't texted. But I didn't ask. I didn't call. I just stood there in that beige kitchen, listening to the tick of the wall clock and the hollow ache of waiting. By the time he walked in damp, casual, holding a fast food cup he clearly didn't think I'd notice, I was already gone emotionally. Somewhere deeper. Somewhere colder. He kissed my cheek and said, "Hey babe," like nothing was off. And for the first time I looked him directly in the eye and said, "Where were you?" He blinked. Smiled like I was joking. "Traffic. You know how." "No," I cut in, my voice level. "Where were you really, Mark?" He stared at me for a second too long. His smile wavered. "You're acting weird," he said, laughing nervously. "You okay?" I walked to the counter and picked up the phone. His other phone. The one I hadn't touched in days. I handed it to him slowly, like I was offering something sacred. "I spoke to her," I said. Everything stopped. The dog whimpered. The microwave hummed. The rain thickened. But Mark, he froze. That awful quiet kind of freeze where people realize they've been found. His fingers wrapped around the phone, but he didn't open it. "I don't know what you think. You don't get to lie anymore," I said louder now. "You don't get to gaslight me. You don't get to look me in the eye and pretend you haven't been somewhere else. With someone else." He opened his mouth. Closed it. I saw something flash behind his eyes, not guilt. Not remorse. Fear. But not of losing me. Fear of being seen. "Erin," he started softer now. "It wasn't serious. It was a mistake. I ended it." I laughed sharp, bitter. "You ended it? Before or after you told her I was your ex?" He looked down. Couldn't hold the weight of what he'd done. Or maybe just didn't want to. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "You didn't mean to get caught," I corrected. The silence between us grew claws. And then I said what I'd been holding in for weeks. "I'm leaving." His head snapped up. "What?" "Wait, Erin, come on. Don't overreact. We can fix this." "No," I said simply. "You broke it. And I'm done gluing myself back together every time you decide to shatter us." He took a step toward me, hands out. "Please. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. We've built a life." I stepped back. "You built a lie. And I lived in it." He stood there, open-mouthed, as I walked past him and up the stairs. My heart pounded, but my hands didn't shake. Not this time. In the bedroom, I opened the closet and pulled out the bags I'd been slowly packing. The ones he hadn't noticed. Or maybe chose not to see. He followed me finally. Stood in the doorway with his arms crossed like he was the one being wronged. "You're throwing it all away over one mistake?" he asked. I turned, looked him dead in the eye. "No," I said. "You threw it away. I'm just finally walking out from under the rubble." For the first time I saw him for who he really was. Not the man I married, not the man I dreamed of saving. Just a scared, selfish man who couldn't stand being alone. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just watched as I zipped the final bag. And when I left the room I didn't look back. I moved in with Marnie the next day. She met me in the driveway, barefoot and furious, hugging me so tightly I felt my ribs protest. Her house smelled like cinnamon and lavender. Too warm, too safe. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath until that moment. We didn't talk much at first. She handed me a glass of wine, pulled out the couch bed, and tossed me a blanket without asking questions. That night I slept for almost 10 hours straight. The next morning everything caught up. There's something brutal about waking up in a place that isn't yours. A borrowed toothbrush, an unfamiliar ceiling. A silence that no longer feels like routine but loss. I sat on the edge of the bed trying to remember who I was before him. Before all of this. My phone was full of unread messages. "Mark. You didn't have to leave like that. Mark. We need to talk. Mark. You're making a mistake." Then came the guilt grenades. "Mark. I made one mistake. You're punishing both of us. Mark. After all we've been through, this is how it ends? Mark. You said forever." I didn't reply. But it wasn't just him. Word got out. A mutual friend, Jenna, texted me asking what happened. When I didn't respond, she called. I let it go to voicemail, but I listened. Her voice was half concerned, half curious. "Mark's really messed up. He says you just left, no explanation. If this is about the trip thing, maybe talk to him before you throw it all away." Throw it all away. Like love is garbage on a schedule. Marnie saw my face when I listened. She sat across the table waiting. People will take his side, I said. She nodded. That's what people do when the truth threatens their comfort. Over the next few days I kept waiting for the pain to peak. That cinematic moment when your heart rips open and you scream into a pillow. But it never came like that. It arrived in quieter forms. Forgetting my towel in the bathroom and realizing I couldn't walk down the hall naked anymore. Reaching for the left side of the bed out of habit. Making 2 cups of coffee without thinking. One morning I stood in front of the mirror and saw a bruise on my collarbone. Old, small, nothing violent. Just a mark from a rushed embrace weeks ago. But it made me cry. Not because I missed him. Because I didn't. That terrified me more than the betrayal. The worst part? Everyone had an opinion. Jenna again, relationships take work. My old coworker, men are visual. You just have to keep their attention. Even my aunt, forgiveness is the foundation of a good marriage. But none of them had to come home to silence. None of them had to sit across from someone they loved and wonder who they really were. And none of them had to find a stranger's phone in their husband's suitcase. Marnie never judged. She just kept asking me one question, gently, again and again. What do you want? And for a long time I didn't know how to answer. I didn't trust myself. Because everyone I'd had for the past 6 years had been filtered through him. I started writing again, journaling mostly. Things I hadn't done since college. I wrote about the first time I caught him lying and how I'd convinced myself it was noble that he was protecting me from stress. I wrote about the time he forgot our anniversary but planned a trip with coworkers 2 days later. I wrote about the first time I stopped recognizing myself in photos. One night, I read something out loud to Marnie, a paragraph about walking past mirrors and avoiding my own eyes. When I finished, she looked at me like I'd said something holy. You're coming back, she said. Little by little. I didn't respond. But I knew she was right. And then a week later, the letter came. A real one. Paper. Folded in thirds. No return address. It was Mark's handwriting. Inside, a full-page apology. Rambling, overwritten, panicked. He didn't ask me to come back. He begged. Said he'd go to therapy. Said he'd quit his job. Said he'd burn every lie to the ground. I folded the letter slowly, neatly, and tucked it into a box with old birthday cards and photos I no longer wanted on the walls. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something stronger than pain. I felt peace. It's been 4 months. I didn't go back. I didn't cave. I didn't even answer his last message, the one where he said he saw my book online and that I sounded strong now. I blocked his number after that. Strength isn't what I feel. Not all the time. Some days I wake up and still flinch when I hear a car door slam outside. I still check the locks twice. I still instinctively reach for the left side of the bed, but there's no one there now. Just the soft weight of my dog curled against my legs and the breeze from an open window. I painted the guest room light blue. Not for anyone else, just for me. I bought a cheap set of paintbrushes and a folding table and started making a mess. Watercolors. Ink. I don't even know what I'm doing, but it doesn't matter. The stains on my fingers make me feel real again. Some nights I go walking, no headphones, no destination. Just me and the streetlights. I walk past houses where people are still pretending. I see the curtains drawn and think, someone else is Erin right now and she doesn't even know it yet. I don't pity her. I just hope she listens to herself sooner than I did. The friends who stayed, they're different now. More careful with their words. They ask how I really am, and sometimes I even tell them. Not everything, but enough. I keep the letter in a drawer, still folded, unopened since that first time. Not as a trophy. Not as proof. Just as a reminder. That love shouldn't come with secrets. That comfort isn't the same as peace. That silence can be just as violent as shouting. Marnie offered to burn it. I told her no. It's not a fire I need, I said. It's a boundary. A few weeks ago, I fixed the leaky sink in her kitchen. She clapped like I'd rebuilt a rocket. Later that night, we baked a cake just because it was Tuesday. And for the first time in a long, long time, I laughed so hard I cried. That's what healing looks like. Not a breakthrough. Not a movie montage. Just Tuesday night cake and quiet laughter. And me standing in the middle of a life I finally chose. Not because it's perfect. Not because I won. But because it's mine now. And I finally get to decide who has access to me.